It includes scheduling opportunities between the conferences for football in addition to men's and women's basketball. It'll also explore opportunities for some of the Olympic sports to play more often as well. The Alliance came after Texas and Oklahoma announced the move to the SEC from the Big 12. That is sports.
Wired Wednesday is here. That means McKinnon Hansen's with us. Good morning, MJ.
Good morning, Tim. How are you?
Does MJ bother you?
No. In fact, I called up a landscaper this last week that I saw driving around town because it said MJ Landscaping. And I called him and I said, you stole my name. My name is MJ. I've had it for 35 years. And he's like, well, my wife and I have been married for 37 years, so you stole it from us. I was like, oh my.
Oh, here we go.
No, but I don't mind MJ at all. In fact, I appreciate having simpler nicknames. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I mean, if I go by the nicknames that my boss gives me, it'd be some of them are profane.
Something a little more colorful than for radio.
Yeah,
okay.
A little more, exactly.
Fair. Good morning, this is McKinnon Hansen with Wired Wednesday, sponsored by Farm Bureau Financial and many other sponsors. This morning is kind of cloudy, but I am grateful for the wind that we get in this valley during these smoky seasons because we tend to get less smoke when there's more wind.
Yeah.
So I'm grateful for that. In studio, we have Kimley Holt of Holt Feedlots over in, is technically your address in Enterprise or is it Burrell?
So it's technically Burrell, Escalante Valley.
Okay.
Burrell
yes,
or Burrell Junction?
So Burrell, the whole area, once you get west of Newcastle about a mile, that whole area
Is Burrell.
is basically Burrell until you get out to Modena or until you get to Enterprise.
So now I have a terrible confession to make, two actually. I've never been to, I guess, Burrell proper. I've gone to the junction.
Yeah, you've been in Burrell. Yeah.
Oh, I have.
Yeah. So Burrell town site is north of Burrell Junction about
10
10 miles. Yeah.
See, I've never gone that far up the road, but now that so it's 10 miles.
So the whole area is basically called Burrell, but north of Burrell Junction, there's a rail spur, and it's kind of like Lund, for example.
Which I've also never been to London.
Yeah, where they call the area Burrell town site.
Okay,
so if you blink, then you will miss it.
So I mean, but there is stuff there because I really want to go out there. I really do.
So I'm not at Burrell town site. We're just west of Newcastle, about a mile, mile and a half.
But you've gone up there, I guess.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Confession number 2. What is a feedlot? I've heard the expression for several because up in Idaho, there's big agriculture up there, and I had to report some of the numbers that were important to people at feedlots, but I don't understand what it is. What is a feedlot?
So a feedlot is a group of pens where you feed cattle a ration, a mixed ration. So it's not they're not out on grass out in the mountains. Munching at will. They are delivered their feed. There's water troughs and pens where you corral cattle, pen cattle.
Their sole purpose is to eat, sleep, and sleep more.
How do I get to be a part of that?
Well, but you've got to take into account what the end game
What the
of
next
that
thing
line
is, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm actually starting to be okay with that possibility.
Well, and what's really interesting is as I've gotten to know different producers in the valley and how we've talked on the air about other producers and how they start their cow-calf production, here, and we're a really great area for that. We're also a really great area for a feedlot, but there's more to a feedlot than just simply going from the cow-calf operation to the feedlot to the slaughterhouse, right? And we've talked about sustainability for the state of Utah, like how we need more of the steps so that we can be self-sustaining. What's interesting is with Holt Feedlot, right? Am I calling
Holt
it
Farms? Yeah.
Holt Farms?
Mm-hmm.
They are the. Oh, now I want to use the wrong word again. Not the in between.
Yeah, a backgrounding yard.
A backgrounding yard. So there's multiple steps to a feedlot situation where it goes from a cow-calf operation. You sell the calves in the fall typically.
Mm-hmm.
It goes to a background lot, and then it goes to a finishing feedlot, and then it goes to a slaughterhouse.
Correct.
So Kinley, tell us why that backgrounding lot is so important and so vital to the industry.
Right. So
Well, they want to make sure the cows don't go out and do anything bad. They're doing background checks, right?
we do a lot of that too.
Okay.
So especially here locally, it's an outlet for our local calf crop. So we buy a lot of our fall calves. Most of them are bought locally through auctions here in Cedar, Ridgefield, Salina, and then ranch direct deals, video cattle, auction cattle that are sold on the internet, on video auctions. So you click on it like eBay when you bid on them. So one, it's important for local ranchers to have an outlet for their cattle, and one that gathers data. Two, a lot of our forages are grown locally. We purchase a lot of alfalfa, triticale hay, and other forages locally. So it is kind of it supports local agriculture.
It's a full circle.
Correct. So it supports not only ranchers but also farming locally, where we're buying cattle and commodities.
So
Ranchers and farmers.
our typical cow-calf operation around here is maybe 500 or 600 head, plus or minus calves.
I'd say 100 head.
Really?
80 head.
That seems
500 head is actually, I mean, that's a relatively significant ranch.
So, go ahead.
I was going to say 100 seems smallish to me. Am I right on that?
So most ranchers, especially in our area, and I'd say most of Utah and western states, aren't full-time ranchers.
Right.
So they have their jobs, and then they can ranch on the side. So I would say I think nationwide the average ranch herd is like 20 head.
Really?
Really?
20, as low as 20.
Yeah.
So this background
You'd have to look
feedlot-
that up though on the internet there.
Oh, okay.
But
We'll
I
have
think
to
it's
Google
about
it.
20 head.
So with that, how many head does your background yard? What's the capacity of it? Are you buying
So-
from like 2 or 3 of these ranch operations? Or are you buying from 90% of them?
So we buy year round, and so it's seasonal. So in the fall is the time in Utah where there's a lot of cattle available, correct, calves.
Right.
And then seasonally we move to other areas for spring. So the capacity for our feed yard is one time we can put about 12,000 head in there. That's what our permit's
Wow.
for. And so we would be buying from a lot of different ranchers at any given time. Especially if you're buying out of the auction and you're putting together cattle through the auction, you could be buying from 20 different ranchers on one day.
Wow. So it's really, to me, it's really helping our local producers, keep the second step, from raising the calves into this background feedlot, really local, and keeping that, I mean, for lack of a better word, like, you are still the economic driving force in this area for what you guys buy and sell and the different transactions that happen in Iron County. It's a huge market.
Yeah, I think that would be some value. Another value that I'd like to think that we create is if you have enough cattle and sell to us direct, and you're curious how your cattle perform, then I gather that data. So I keep cattle identified, and so I know how they perform. And so I can actually give feedback if ranchers are interested in knowing how their cattle, what the health is like on their cattle, how their cattle convert feed to gain, then I have that information.
Well, and something that we were talking about earlier that piqued my interest is when cattle don't go to a background feedlot and they go right into a finishing lot, the mortality rate has diminished.
Right. So historically, health in cattle actually has gotten worse over time.
Really?
Yes.
That surprises me a little bit.
Right. So what? And there's new vaccines out, and they actually.
Oh, don't tell me we're giving the cows COVID vaccines.
Well,
Dun, dun,
not
dun.
COVID, right? But there are 5 main viral infections that cattle can get, and so if you vaccinate for those, you're supposed to have some response, right?
Right.
But what happens what was happening and still is on a large degree is cattle are naive when they go into a finish yard.
Yeah.
And a finish yard is it's an intense area for those calves to go from mother to feed, and a lot of finish yards, especially in other areas and pulling cattle from other areas, they're experiencing high mortality and high morbidity on the cattle. And so the service that really that we're providing as a backgrounding yard isn't just getting the cattle healthy and straight, but it's also growing them up to a weight where it's more economical to start them on a high energy diet. So it's not extremely economical to start a 550 pound calf on a high energy diet. They won't start tucking some of that away for fat for a while. So it's less efficient that way unless you have a lot of corn, which we don't in our area.
Oh, just happen to listen to this show. There's all kinds of corn here.
Well, and something that's been on my mind is we've talked about sustainability in Iron County and the state of Utah, and how Utah Farm Bureau Federation opened a slaughterhouse up in North Salt Lake area. I can't think of the exact name, but it's interesting to see things come full circle, right? Well, then I look out over the valley and all this not unused land. It's being used for grazing or wildlife and things. But what could we do with a sustainable finishing lot?
So,
but because of the feed you mentioned.
So I mean, the market identifies opportunity to make money. If there's an opportunity, the market will identify it. So I obviously.
Wait, you're talking about free market right here. Uncontrolled market by the government. The free market will present itself. I totally agree.
So in a finishing yard, if it were plausible, extremely plausible, you'd see them around. And the reason we spoke about before that finish yards you just don't see them in Utah. We're so far away from a source of energy to get the cattle as big as they need to be to go to slaughter.
So are most of those finishing yards are like Oklahoma and places like that?
So Panhandle of Texas into Oklahoma. Oklahoma is mostly known more for their wheatgrass than finish yards, but Panhandle of Texas into Kansas, there's a lot of finish yards. Colorado,
basically where there's corn.
Yeah, the Corn Belt, Iowa. We were talking about before how much it costs to get corn to our area on the rail. In the Corn Belt, they might be paying anywhere from 0 to a 50-cent basis or extra per bushel of corn.
Wow.
For us, it's $1.50, which translates to about $45 to $50 a head, which may not sound like a lot, but when you're finishing on scale like they do in the Midwest, they're not penciling in a huge margin.
It's incredible the different aspects of agriculture and the different steps that we see transact through town. We have our spring season, our calving operations and things, and then we go into fall and we know that they're sold, but where do they go from there? So it's really interesting, because Hope Farms takes that background yard and has made it work for this area, and then they send them off to finish. So they've found the market niche, at least for our local producers, to be able to take a Southern Utah calf, to keep it Southern Utah a little longer, make sure that it's healthy, tracking those records through his databases to make sure that they are fully productive, through their cycle.
Yeah, no, that's accurate.
So where then? I guess then, most of the cattle that you have coming through your property, after you're done with them, they leave the area. Is that correct?
Right. So we've sent cattle. We sent California, Idaho, Oregon, Kansas, Texas, Colorado. Sent some to Canada this year.
Now, Oregon and California surprised me a little bit.
So the central part of California is an extremely fertile agricultural area.
But I don't, and I again, this is me, but growing up there, we heard about oranges and fruits a lot. I don't remember there being a lot of corn, but I guess there is.
So actually, you're right. They don't grow a lot of corn, but most everything that is grown, in the Central Valley, is what I'm talking.
Right. Yeah.
Most everything that's produced has a byproduct that then goes through a cow.
Okay.
And in fact, the Central Valley is home to, I believe, 3 million dairy cows.
Oh yeah.
Dairy is actually California's #1 agricultural product.
And that part I did know, but
Yeah.
But what do they feed them? I guess these byproducts.
So, for example, you have almonds produced in California. Almond hulls
Really?
go to feed cattle. You have, imagine if there is some form of citrus. I'm not sure if citrus is really a great cattle feed, but basically every human food that's produced would have some byproduct that could then be fed to cattle. So I actually worked at a feed yard in California right out of college, and they fed mostly corn, which was brought in on the rail. It's extremely expensive.
I would think so. Yeah.
Oh,
Extremely
my.
expensive, but that company I work for owned their own packing facility, their own slaughterhouse.
Okay.
So they were able to vertically integrate and make it so it wasn't, if they lost money feeding the cattle, they could make it up packing the cattle.
So was this? Has this been in your blood ever since you can remember wanting to do this?
No, not at all.
Really?
No, I went to college not thinking I was going to actually go back to the family farm. I thought that I was going to go into hotel management, for example. And I went and did an internship for Marriott, and within 5 days, I wanted to get out of there. That was
5 days. You lasted 5 days.
No, I finished my internship.
Okay.
I'm a finisher, but
So what
I
brought
knew
you back?
immediately? Opportunity. I mean, our operation, it's me and 4 of my brothers. So we have a dairy and we have our farm, and then the feed yard. And so they're basically the promise of opportunity. When I went to work in California at the feed yard in California after college, I had no background in feeding cattle. We had a cow calf.
Right.
But I was just like what you're explaining I was just like your average listener. Like I know that we have cows and I know they have calves, but where do they go to from there? And eventually we get beef on our plate.
Right.
Right. But I didn't know how sophisticated feed yards actually are, how much data they collect, how relatively intense of an operation it is.
Which is just incredible, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to just learn about the different areas and learn that there are more operations out there than what we're originally aware of, because this area, I mean, it's still economic driving force is agriculture. It's held the #1 and #2 spot for the last 50 years. So bringing awareness to the different things that are in our area that people have managed to put together to stay together. It sounds like you're second generation, was that right?
Yeah.
So the barrier to entry, he's second generation. Granted, the barrier to entry, in this day and age, like in 2022, 21, sorry, it's 21. Oh my. What
Soon to
those
be
look
22,
like.
by the way.
I know. We're
4
not
months
even
to
gonna talk.
Christmas.
No,
Today.
shush.
No,
We're not gonna. No. Mm-mm.
4 months, McKinnon.
I haven't even started. I don't even want to start the Christmas thing yet.
I mean, your favorite disc jockeys and announcers love,
Christmas
jerky and stuff. I'm just saying.
I know, and someday I just need to bring you guys. Oh man, I made peach cobbler last night. Not to
Oh,
totally
sounds
digress, but oh my goodness, I am so good at making cobbler. So good. Anyways, we are running short on time. Kinley, what do we absolutely have to know? We have about 2 minutes left in the show. What do we want to know about you?
So that really, our operation is, I think you summed it up the best, that it's not a service because it's market driven, but I think we're a valuable asset to the area, being able to keep local cattle locally, keep local feed locally, and that's about it. That's really an advantage that we have. And maybe I hate to call it a service because we're a for-profit business, and we're not
Right.
to service, right?
But no, you fulfill the need of the service that needs to be taken care of it, and that's the background yard.
Yeah.
Kinley, thank you so much for
Yeah,
joining
this
us
is a
today.
fascinating discussion.
Yeah.
We need to visit again. Please
Yes,
come
yes,
again.
yes.
Alrighty.
Please come back. This has been McKinnon Hansen with Wired Wednesday, your local Farm Bureau financial agent, 435-592-2021. Always looking for sponsors and people who want to interview on this show for the 2022 calendar. We need producers to come on the show. If you know of anybody or if you're scared to ask them, please give me a call, 435-592-2021. I want to make sure everybody knows we're out there.
All right, MJ, we'll see you, okay?
Thank you so much.
Take care. But where's the push, by the way? We need the pusher back again.
We do need the pusher. In fact, I will make sure that we get on the next docket.
Okay, all right. All right, we'll see you next time. Thanks, MJ. We appreciate that very